And this morning, I'm going to read a rather longer passage than I normally would, but it's such an important resurrection account. And if I was to try to pick and choose this and that, it'd be difficult to do. So I'm going to read from Luke 24, beginning at verse 13, on the road to Emmaus. Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it's the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but they didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it was as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus." He said to them, "How foolish you are, how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it's nearly evening, the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at their table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us as he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told of what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. The two followers are walking away from Jerusalem, not to Jerusalem. We're told that their faces said it all. They were downcast. You can begin to imagine what that looked like. They were full of what had happened on Good Friday and couldn't come to terms with the news that some of the women brought concerning an empty tomb. Jesus Christ joins them. Imperceptibly at first, they didn't recognize him. He engages with them in conversation and even challenges them. I like that part of the story when Jesus is prepared to challenge them. "How foolish you are. Didn't the Messiah have to suffer all these things?" As he quotes from Scripture and that sense of what it is that really had happened. He challenges them. Then they stop at their destination, Emmaus. They invite him to stay. At the table, he took bread, gave it to them after giving thanks, and their eyes were open. Oh, you can see the pattern, can't you? Reminding them of that last Lord's Supper. He disappeared from their sight, but they remembered the journey. Oh gosh, didn't they remember the journey? So much so that they say, "Were not our hearts burning within us when he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" Oh, this is resurrection in a new way in their lives. They knew something was different. This stranger who at first motioned as if to go further, they asked to stay with him. But as he takes the bread and he breaks it, gosh, it's as if like scales, as we describe Saul to Paul later in the Acts of the Apostles. Something remarkable is happening here. And their eyes are opened and they remember that experience of when he talked to them about what the scriptures had said. Something was happening. They knew this wasn't just any old walk, but they were so full of their own pain and their own sorrow and their own agony that they failed to look at him in a proper light? Was it the fact that it was getting dark? Well, all these things have been conjectured during time. But the main thing was that when they got to that table, it all began to make sense. What they had seen and heard now before them at the table made sense of what they had heard on the road. Now, here's the remarkable thing. The passage concludes with this thought. They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. Gosh, it doesn't even tell us they got to the third course of the meal. They were so moved by what had happened, their hearts burning within them, that they got up and they headed back to Jerusalem. Gosh, what news they've got to share of the risen Lord. He disappeared from their sight, but he would never, never disappear from their hearts, because they knew now that Jesus Christ, who had lived and died, had been raised to new life and would be alive forever.